Let me know if this sounds familiar. You hear a sentence in German and then you start translating. Okay, that means this and then this, and by the time it finally makes sense, the conversation has already moved on. You're always just a few seconds too late. So in this video, I'll show you exactly how to start reducing that word-for-word translation in your head so you can understand German faster and begin responding with more confidence in real time. Because the goal is not to become a faster translator. The goal is to hear German and then connect it directly to meaning. And if we haven't met yet, hallo und herzlich willkommen. My name is Salome and I work with English-speaking expats and professionals who are serious about becoming confident and conversational in German. Inside my program, the German Fluency Academy, I guide them through a clear, structured system designed for real-life communication, not random vocab lists or confusing grammar rules. And this habit of translating everything into English first is one of the most common things I see keeping people stuck, even when they already know a lot of words. Because you can know the vocabulary, but if every sentence has to pass through English before it makes sense, real conversations will still feel too fast. So if your goal is to actually speak German confidently and participate in real-life conversations, I'd like to invite you to my free beginner workshop. Inside, I walk you through the foundations you need from German pronunciation to building your own sentences correctly step by step. Just comment free beginner workshop below and I'll send you the link to access the free workshop. So first of all, translating is not the problem. Especially if you're starting from scratch, this is exactly what your brain is supposed to do. You hear a German word and your brain immediately tries to connect it to English. That's how you begin to make sense of a new language. So if you're translating in your head right now, that's not a mistake. It's just a natural part of the learning process. But here's where things start to shift. At the same point, that same process that helps you in the beginning starts slowing you down because real conversations don't wait for you to translate, right? And this is the key thing I want you to understand. You're not struggling because German is too fast. You're struggling because translation is too slow. Your brain is doing extra work, going from German to English and then to meaning, when what you actually need is a direct connection between German and meaning. So let's break down what's actually happening in your brain. When you hear German, your brain doesn't process it directly, right? It goes German, English, meaning. And then when you want to respond, it goes back, meaning English, German. So you're constantly going back and forth between two languages. Now imagine this in real time. You hear a sentence like, Ich gehe am Wochenende mit Freunden ins Kino. And your brain immediately starts translating. So ich is I, gehe is go, am Wochenende on the weekend, mit Freunden, with friends, ins Kino, to the cinema. And while you're still putting that together, the speaker is already on the next sentence. That's why conversations feel overwhelming, especially because German sentence structure doesn't always match English, right? You can't always translate word for word and expect it to make sense immediately. So if your brain tries to process every single word individually in English first, you're constantly playing catch up instead of actually following the conversation. So here is the shift you need to make. You don't want to translate every word. You want your brain to recognize meaning fast enough to keep up. Let me show you what I mean with our earlier example. Ich gehe am Wochenende mit Freunden ins Kino. You don't actually need to translate the full sentence. If you catch Wochenende, Freunde, and Kino, you already understand what's going on. And this is the key. Fluency is not about perfect understanding. It's not about translating everything correctly. Fluency is when your brain recognizes enough meaning fast enough to follow the conversation. And then over time, the recognition becomes automatic. So fast that it feels like you're understanding German directly. Now, how does your brain actually get there? Because every time you hear German, every time you see it, your brain builds a connection. And in the beginning, those connections are weak, so your brain relies on English to make sense of things. But with repetition and real usage, those connections get stronger. So instead of translating Freunde into friends, your brain just recognizes the meaning instantly. No extra step. And the more often that happens, the faster everything becomes. Until you no longer feel like you're translating, you're just understanding. Let's make this even more practical, because this is not just something you understand, it's something you train. Just like a muscle in the gym. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. So, number one, learn in chunks and not single words. A very common mistake is learning isolated word translations. For example, learning zu equals to or at. That seems logical, but it actually creates confusion later because in this example, zu can have many different meanings and usages. So instead, learn it as one unit of something. Like for example, zu Hause, meaning at home. Your brain stores it as one block, which means you don't have to translate each individual word, you just recognize the meaning instantly. And that's much faster than building the meaning word by word. Then number 2, train your brain to recognize. When you're listening, your goal is not to understand every single word, your goal is to understand the message. So instead of trying to catch everything, focus on keywords, as we said earlier, and context. A lot of times, just from observing the context and understanding a few keywords, you already get the gist of what's happening and what's being said. But that only works if you don't get too hung up on trying to understand every single word. And step number 3 is use images and situations. For concrete words, this is actually very powerful. So instead of learning Apfel equals apple, think of Apfel and then have a picture of an apple. This is how you start skipping the translation step entirely. And you can even take this one step further because most of the language is not just single words, it's patterns and situations. So start connecting German directly to real-life context. Like for example, im Büro. You imagine yourself at work or in the office. Or nach Hause gehen. You're imagining yourself going home. Now you're no longer thinking in English, you're linking German directly to real-life context and meaning. And the same strategy applies to the next step, which is train speaking separately. Once your brain starts recognizing meaning directly, you also need to train it to produce German the same way. There is an important distinction here. When you're listening, the goal is fast recognition, right? But when you're speaking, the goal is fast retrieval. So speaking needs its own kind of practice. You want to train your brain to go from situation to German, instead of situation, English, German. And a very simple but powerful way to do this is start narrating your day out loud. Like for example, ich trinke Kaffee, ich arbeite, ich gehe nach Hause. Now you're taking those same situations you already understand and turning them into German automatically. And that's when you stop translating and start recognizing and producing German directly. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, this all makes sense, but I'm not quite there yet, maybe forming even simple sentences still feels unclear. Maybe you're missing the structure or you're not sure how to actually put words together correctly. That's completely normal. And that's exactly where you need a clear step-by-step approach. So if you are serious about becoming confident in German and want structured guidance on how to actually build your own sentences from the ground up, that's exactly what I teach inside my free beginner workshop. Just comment free beginner workshop below and I'll send you the link to register completely for free. Now here is something very important. You don't just stop translating overnight. This is a process and it happens in stages. At the beginning, you translate everything and that's completely normal. Then you start translating a little less. Some words feel familiar. Then you begin to recognize chunks and whole phrases that you understand instantly. And eventually your brain starts connecting German directly to meaning. That's when conversations start to feel more natural, less effort and less delay. But here is the mistake most people make. They try to understand everything perfectly before they respond. But real conversations don't work like that. You don't need perfect understanding. You need to understand enough and fast enough to stay in the conversation. So if you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. Your goal is not a faster version of German English meaning. Your goal is German meaning. The faster you build that direct connection, the more natural German will start to feel. And if your goal is to move beyond translating and start processing German more naturally, comment free beginner workshop below and I'll send you access to my training, Speak German with Confidence. And if you want to take this one step further and learn how to actually build your own German sentences with correct word order, watch this video next where I'll walk you through this step by step. Das ist alles für heute. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!